How did JavaScript handle variable arguments before ES6 REST parameters? Imagine trying to write a function that can accept any number of inputs without knowing how many there will be. Before the days of modern JavaScript, this was a common challenge. Developers found a way around it using a special object called the arguments object. This object is available inside every non-arrow function and automatically contains all the arguments passed to that function. It's like a bag that holds everything you throw into the function, no matter how many items you put in. Even though the arguments object looks like an array, it is not a true array. You can access each argument by its index, starting from 0, just like with arrays. For example, arguments gives the first argument, arguments the second, and so on. You can also find out how many arguments were passed by checking arguments length. This made functions flexible because they could handle any number of inputs, which was especially useful for utility functions like finding the maximum or summing numbers. Here's a simple example. You create a function called sumAll that doesn't declare any parameters. Inside, you set a total to 0, then loop through the arguments object, adding each value to the total. When you call sumAll with 3 numbers, it adds them all up and returns the total. This way, the function can handle any number of arguments without needing to specify them explicitly. But there are some limitations. The arguments object isn't a real array, so you can't directly use array methods like map or forEach on it. If you want to use those methods, you have to convert arguments into a real array first. Also, the arguments object only works in regular functions, not in arrow functions, which can confuse new developers. Another thing to remember is that the arguments object reflects the actual arguments passed, not the named parameters in the function. If you change a named parameter inside the function, the corresponding argument in the arguments object also changes, unless you are in strict mode where this link is broken. Before the introduction of REST parameters in ECMAScript 6, this was the standard way to handle functions with variable arguments. It was widely used in libraries and frameworks to create flexible code. However, it was not as clear or easy to work with as the newer REST syntax. REST parameters, introduced in ECMAScript 6, offer a cleaner way to gather remaining arguments into an array. But understanding the arguments object is still important, especially when working with older code or trying to understand how JavaScript functions have evolved over time. Knowing both methods helps you read legacy code and appreciate why the newer features were added to make coding simpler and more readable.